Jacqui Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change Issues and asks, what are the impacts
Before the member carries on, I just say to government front bench on this occasion, it is one of their own backbenchers seeking to ask a question. Please a little more order. Jacqui Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for Climate Change Issues, what are the impacts of the changes this government has made to the emissions trading scheme on costs for consumers?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, this government amended the emissions trading scheme to halve the impacts on consumers by requiring only 1 unit for every 2 tonnes of emissions for the transport and electricity sectors, and also putting a cap of $25 per tonne on the price. This reduced the cost per household from $330 a year to $165 a year, or $3.17 per week, to be precise.
Supplementary.
Jacqui Dean.
To the Minister, which officials were responsible for calculating the $165 per year or $3 per week cost of the ETS for the average household?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the figure was produced by the emissions trading group of officials in Treasury, and the methodology was included in the original regulatory impact statement on the legislation. The analysis is based on a household using 8,000 kilowatt hours of power and doing 28,000 kilometres of driving per year, and power price increases of 1 cent per kilowatt hour and petrol price increase of 3 cents per litre.
John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A supplementary to the Minister of Climate Change Issues. Does the government's forecast of the increased value of electricity generation assets, shown on page 136 of the budget, of $821 million, include the windfall profits to energy companies like Mercury Energy, which announced yesterday a 3.3% increase from 1 July on account of the ETS? If not, why not? And if so, how much of that $800 million plus is due to those windfall profits?
Mr. Speaker, the increase yesterday announced by Mercury Energy was 3%, which is actually less than the 5% that the government has indicated to consumers will be the cost of the emissions trading scheme. No, the change in valuation is not a reflection of the emissions trading scheme. It is quite complex, having both the ETS and the complexities of the electricity market to determine the exact impacts. I note that neither Genesis or Meridian are planning to increase their price in the short term. The government will be watching the power companies closely, and if we believe that they are unfairly putting up prices as a consequence of the ETS, reserve the right to have some form of inquiry.
Jacqui Dean.
To the Minister, what reports has the Minister received on the price impacts on consumers of other countries' emissions trading schemes, noting claims that New Zealand is leading the world and the most expensive?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, 29 of the 38 countries with Kyoto Protocol commitments have an ETS, and I'm advised that the power price increases range from between 23% and 33%. A specific report in 2008 on the European ETS put the price impact at between 10 and 12 euro per megawatt hour, which would relate in New Zealand terms to between 1.8 and 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour, i.e. more than double ours. The 5% increase imposed by our amended ETS is very modest and far from world leading.
John Boscawen.
Supplementary to the Minister of Climate Change Issues. Does he agree with his colleague, the Minister of Agriculture, David Carter, that under current government policy, the cost of the ETS for the average dairy farmer will be $3,900 per annum for the period 1 July 2010 to 31 December 2012? $7,800 per annum for the period 1 January 2013 to 31 December 2014, and $10,200 per annum from 1 January 2015, as calculated by Meat and Wool New Zealand? And if not, why not?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I think the member is being quite misleading for this reason.
Order. The member shouldn't say. The member asked him if he agreed with a set of figures, or asked him if he agreed with the Minister of Agriculture, and some figures used by the Minister of Agriculture, as I understand the question. And the answer shouldn't start with the member being misleading, because the member's not alleged anything. He's asked the Minister whether he agrees with some figures someone else has used. The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, no, I do not accept the accuracy of those figures for a very simple reason, and that is this government has made plain that we will not be proceeding with the step up in the emissions trading scheme in 2013, or the addition of additional sectors, unless there is progress by our key trading partners. So the figures that the member is using for 2013 and beyond are quite misleading.
Jacqui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, has the Minister received any advice on the price impacts for households of adopting a 40% emissions target by 2020?
The Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I have seen economic analysis that shows to meet that sort of reduction in emissions, the price of carbon would need in New Zealand to be $500 per tonne. This would involve the cost being 40 times what our emissions trading scheme would be, or $120 a week. It beggars belief that there are some members out there complaining about the power price increase of our very modest ETS at the same time as they're promising a 40% reduction in emissions by 2020, and members opposite should reflect on those contradictory messages.
Question number 9, Catherine Delahunty.
Kia ora, te whare, tēnā koutou. To the Minister of Energy and Resources.